Well, thank you very much. This is the third time you have been with us in Monterrey Tech. I have a few questions as we receive the others. You mentioned that program Maria Jose has with 6,000 or 8,000 high school students. And by the way, Maria Jose told me that these students, through the work and through the Twitter and Facebook work, have saved 40 lives in Africa out of malaria. Yeah. So we are very, very, very proud of our high school students. So your foundation program, Face to Faith, which encourages global citizenship, is very active in Mexico. How can high school students in Mexico, including our high school students, take what they have learned through this program, Face to Faith, into their community to support peaceful coexistence?
The lesson I think people can take from the course is just to be able to understand the other person. You know, what I was, 2 nights ago, I was in Jerusalem. And, you know, that is obviously the center of religious worship for Christians, for Muslims, and for Jews. And all over that region right now, you have this problem of religious extremism. And if we are to resolve that type of problem, we need to find ways of understanding our common heritage, our common roots. And I think if there's more understanding, there's less conflict. Where there's ignorance, there's fear. And so that's what I think people can get out of this face-to-faith program. And as we expanded, you know, for the first time with the Italian government now, government in the Philippines, for example, where we have now agreed with the government, we're going to take this program out through the school system. A few months back, I did a launch with the Secretary of State for Education in the United States, Arnie Duncan, and we're also now developing this in the public school sector in the US. And the important thing to understand is not about teaching people to be religious, it's teaching people to understand about religion. Because I think to be religiously literate today is important. If you don't understand the faith aspect, you probably don't really understand the society in which you're going into. So this is why it's important.
Is it fair to say that faith promotes citizenship? And if that is the case, how faith can promote citizenship? And do you think that faith can help a country to reduce poverty and bring peace and prosperity? And do you think that faith in God may help us as a society to have faith in ourselves, faith in our institutions?
Well, I think it can do, yes. I mean, I think the interesting thing is you have 2 sides to religion. And you know, if you look around the world, you see these 2 faces, if you like, of religion. And one face is very much about doctrine and often dogma and so on. And that can be sometimes divisive. So in parts of Europe today, you have a very strong anti-religious movement that says religion causes all the trouble. You know, so don't talk to me about religion. It's the source of the problem. But I always say, to be fair, you have to see the other face of religion, which is where people do amazing work of compassion and service to others, and where they're motivated by the values that actually are the core values of most religious faiths, which are about service to other people. And the reason why I think faith is an important part of a strong society is that, you know, to me at any rate, the essence of faith is the recognition of something more important than yourself. Okay, and that is what creates a better society in the end. Now, you can have that feeling without religion, of course. But I think at its best, religious faith promotes that concept. It's interesting when you look at China today, and the Chinese leadership sometimes are very worried about religion, but sometimes they also see religion as a positive thing in bringing people to some understanding that it's not just about materialism. So I think, in any event, The true fact of it is that the numbers of religious people in the world today is growing, not diminishing. So, you know, it's sensible that we understand it. But I think, no, it is best, I think faith can play a very important part in developing a good and strong society.
This question from one high school student says, what are the biggest challenges when trying to build a strong citizenship?
The biggest challenges are, well, there's two, really. The first is to get people to understand that they've also got a duty as citizens to their society. Because, you know, people get busy. You know, they're trying to get a job, they're trying to earn money, raise a family, you know. But in the end, you need people also to say, well, look, there's a bit of me that's interested in my community and what's happening. So that's the first big challenge, to get people to think of themselves as active citizens. The second challenge, which is where you guys, I think, come in, is a lot of people want to contribute, but if there's no organization, how do they do it? And, you know, one of the things that is important is to create strong community and civic organizations. And this is where government should try and help and not get in the way. Because it's a strange thing, this, about government. You know, government can create an environment in which civic institutions can grow, or it can create an environment in which civic society feels, you know, second class. And the real actions with government. And I think increasingly today, a lot of the best things will happen outside of traditional government mechanisms. I mean, it's interesting, in another part of work that I do in Africa, I would say some of the biggest game changers in Africa over these last few years have been not from global governments or African governments themselves even sometimes, but actually through, you know, institutions like the Gates Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative. And, you know, so it's a new world today. And what we need is for government also to give the space for these civic organizations to grow. But it will happen in the end. And when it does happen, it's very exciting to be part of.
What lessons we Latin Americans can learn from other latitudes, from other parts of the world, to promote citizenship and bring prosperity to our countries?
I was telling you about my first day as Prime Minister, but in my last day, the problem is that you begin as a leader at your least capable and most popular. And then you end at your most capable and least popular. That's the way it goes. The challenges countries face today are not really all that different. Everyone thinks it's different. You know, I can't tell you the number of countries I go to, and the leader says to me, yeah, my country's very different. So we got big problems of security, education reform, you know, how we get the right type of business environment, how we get people to pay their tax, you know. And you say, no, this is common everywhere. And here is the good news. Actually, there are lessons to be learned from around the world. So if you look at education today, there are definite lessons of education reform to be learned around the world. Right? Definitely. And one of them, by the way, is that you've got to run your education system for the pupils, the students, and the parents. And the people who work in the education system are very important, but they shouldn't determine the policy. So the good news is there are lessons as to what works, right? If you want good business investment in your country, it's very simple. You have predictable rules, proper rule of law, etc. The bad news is it's very hard to do it. Okay, but actually, the sensible thing for any country today is to look around the world and learn. You know, these systems that governments create, they now have to change quite rapidly to be effective. And the good news, as I say, is you can see what should be done. The challenge is doing it.
What about the use of technology for citizen participation through, it says, direct instead of representative democracy? Oscar Naranjo was talking about the use of technology to promote citizenship, something he calls wiki-citizenship. Mm-hmm. What do you think should be the use of technology to promote citizenship?
There's lots of ways you can use technology to promote citizenship. The trouble is, unless there's some means of doing it, of organizing it, it won't happen. I mean, this is what you guys can do, I think. But, the possibilities of technology are endless, really. See, I think the odd thing is, for me, I grew up without all this technology, obviously. And, I look at my 12-year-old son, and, when he's doing his homework now, he's constantly using the internet to research things, to decide things, to look up different things. And, he phoned me a couple of nights ago, and he's got something to do with religious education. And it was all about the origins of the church. And so he was able to just get through the internet a whole set of different essays and books and so on, and just accumulate that information like that. So we live our lives like that today. The odd thing about our society and our education system, our citizenship, is that we still kind of do it in the way we used to do it. Whereas really, I think we've only just begun to develop the potential of this technology for linking people up together. Right. And that's what citizenship's about. And it's, I find it as a world very, well, it's confusing for me because I'm not very good at it, but, my children are not going to live or work or think in the way that we did because of the power of connectivity through technology. So we should use that. We could do so much more, and that's why, again, your type of institution and people like you can help provide the platform within which people can do that, because that's what they miss. And, for government today and for the way we provide services, if we were, this is a bigger question than citizenship, but if we were designing a healthcare system today or an education system, from today, so supposing we had no legacy of institutions and practice and all the rest of it, we're designing a new system. It wouldn't look anything like the systems we have. Right? So this is why I think this power of technology to change lives is absolutely critical, and with citizenship every bit as much as anywhere else.
In order to promote citizenship, faith, prosperity, and peace in our countries, what should be the role of the government, the private sector, the social sector, the university, and the student leaders? Here.
Right. Very quickly. The role of government should be to realize that it should support the voluntary sector and not get in its way. And it should create systems of support for it. The role of the private sector should be to realize it has some corporate social responsibility to the place it works in and to contribute. The role of the social sector should be to create these forums and networks in which people can participate. The role of the university should be to educate people as to how they can participate. And the role of the student leaders is the role student leaders always have, which is to agitate and blame the rest of us.
Right.
It's just important to realize what leadership is ultimately about, because leadership is the same quality. you know, whatever walk of life you're in, whether you're a political leader leading a university, or you're leading a company, or a civic society organization. And it's about being prepared to take the responsibility of decision making. And decision making is difficult. Because I always say, when you decide, you divide. Right? So the moment you end up taking decisions, people criticize you, they don't like it, and so on. But you know, my view is there are two types of people in life. There are those that do, and there are those that commentate. Right? And it's better to be a doer, not a commentator, really. And even though it's very difficult, and I don't advise anyone who's got a very thin skin to be in the business of leadership, it is actually very rewarding as well. And, you know, when I actually said that about no reverse gear, it was when people were wanting me actually to back away from reforms I was doing. And I wanted to say, no, I'm going forward. And, you know, you never achieve all the things you want to achieve as a leader, that's for sure. But your responsibility ultimately as a leader is to make those decisions. And, you know, you won't always get them right, and you make mistakes. But it's better to make the decision than to opt out. So I think that's what leadership is really about. And I learned that over time. I mean, you know, because I came to power, as I was saying to you, after a long period of opposition, I came to power wanting to please all of the people all of the time. Right? Now, by the end, I wasn't sure I was pleasing any of the people any of the time. But ultimately, I came to disagree with that view of the leader. That actually your job is to step out in front and not to follow at a safe distance behind. So really, I guess that's what I meant.
You said the art of leadership is saying not saying yes. It is very easy to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the, yes.
Thank you.
No, Carlos. No, look, it's the way I always tell a leader is, you know, it's like, you learn this, and actually some of the student leaders will learn this pretty quick, that, you know, there always are two types of politicians as well. There's the person that can get up and rouse the crowd by telling them what they want to hear. I mean, that's not really leadership in the end. Leadership is about being prepared to say, there are priorities, there are choices. Here are the choices. You know, it's not about saying yes to everything. That's the easy thing to do and not the right thing to do. I mean, the trick is to say no nicely. And that's sometimes quite difficult to do, but I mean, that's what it's about. And in the end, by the way, I'm convinced the most successful leaders, and after all, I guess, you know, I won 3 elections, I didn't lose them. I mean, the most successful leaders, I think ultimately, and right now in our world with all its challenges, are the ones prepared to say, this is not the easy thing, but it is the right thing. And I do think in the end, people respect that.
And the last question, and here we have many other questions for you. Mexico is a wonderful country with wonderful people. Unfortunately, few bad people are causing social unrest through crime. However, even the majority of Mexicans are great people, hardworking, family-oriented. We are not well known for being really active citizens. Being yourself an eternal warrior against complacency, what advice, to close this session, can you give to all these leaders in front of us to fight against a tremendous complacency in our country?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, the security challenge is obviously huge. And it's a little similar actually to countries who face deep threats from terrorism as well. And it's very tough because you go through these periods where you think, is it worth it to have this fight? But I think in the end it is worth it and necessary. And, you know, the one thing I think for Mexico, and as I say, you can sometimes do this easier from the outside. I mean, the outside world thinks of Mexico differently today from, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The outside world thinks of Mexico now as, you know, it's taking its place at the top table, really. And the thing is, when you reach this next stage of economic development, you know, the rules that govern a society, that common space, I mean, everybody's got to be subject to them. And you can't have groups of people living in a kind of subculture that say, we're not, you know, we'll do what we want to do. And that's, you know, I think it's important not just for your society, but for the next stage of economic development, that's true. So that, I think, is your big challenge, but I would meet this challenge with a certain amount of optimism. You know, you've come a very, you know, long way. It is a respected country today. And, you know, each country has its own challenge. I mean, we in our part of the world, we've got to make major changes, reforms to get our spirit back. Right? You've kind of got your spirit now. You've got to take it to the next level. So we've all got our problems in a different way. But ultimately, I just conclude with this. I mean, I'm an eternal warrior against complacency, but I'm also an eternal advocate of hope and optimism. I mean, I think there is every cause to be optimistic, because, you know, we live in societies today where there is massive opportunity if we're prepared to make the right decisions and have the right leadership. And, you know, for you here in Mexico, one of the reasons I wanted this partnership with Monterrey Tech and wanted to come to Mexico is because, you know, I was looking from the outside saying, where are the interesting places to work in the world? And this was one of them. So this is why it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.